Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Kiddushin Daf Mem Hey. Today's stuff is sponsored by Jason, Erica, and Raquel in honor of their mother, Patty Belkin, on her birthday yesterday. Wishing a very happy birthday to our amazing mother. Okay, we're going to get started with a review of the end of yesterday's stuff. We started, and this is really going to be our topic today in general, which is a minor who gets betrothed without her father's consent. And then her father is silent. How do we view this betrothal? And how do we view the father's silence? It's a fascinating question. When the father doesn't respond, what does that mean? Does it mean he agrees with it? Or does it mean he just didn't think it was anything that was worth even responding to? Right? This reminds me of those famous stories that always circulated when I was a kid of, the soda, right? The ring on the soda can, and that a kid gave the ring to a girl in school and said, "Harat mikudesheli," and is she or not? Now, actually was a case that happened supposedly, and they actually said she had to get a get out of Suffolk. But that must have been a case where she was already of age. And here we're talking about when she was still a minor, where her actions can't be necessarily thought of as valid actions. However, if the father gives his agreement to it, then that can turn it into an actual action. So what did we say here? Now, also the background you need to know, I'll review this. This is very important to understand for today's daf, which is there's two tracks for Kiddushin for a minor. The main track is the father betroths the minor. He can do that. And by Torah law, she is totally and fully married, which means she wants to get out of it. She needs a get. She wants to marry somebody else. But if the father is not around, meaning usually it means, there's two possibilities usually for this. Either the father died, or the father already betrothed her once and she got married. And then let's say her husband died or divorced her. She's still a minor. He no longer has rights to betroth her. That's called the yitoma b'chayei ha'av. It's a very interesting, kind of difficult term, but it's not really what it means. It means she's an orphan while her father's still alive. She's not really an orphan for other issues, but for the purposes of marriage, he can no longer marry her off. Now, there was a concern, we talked about this yesterday, that these minor girls that are wandering around as free, not unmarried girls, and their fathers don't have responsibility for them, there was a concern that people were going to treat them as hefker. So, and possibly rape them or abuse them, or or maybe seduce them. And therefore, because they don't have a father to protect them or marry them off, therefore, they instituted that the brother or the mother could betroth them to someone, but it would only have validity by rabbinic law, which has all sorts of ramifications, of which we discussed a little bit yesterday at the end of the daf, which I'll quickly review. So now, the other possibility is, if she betroths herself, that's also only valid on a rabbinic level because she's a minor, okay? So both those situations where the brother or the mother married, betroth her, or she betroths herself, and that's really our question for today, can she betroth herself? Now, if she was already married, then presumably she could accept a betrothal on her own behalf. But if her father's there and still functioning as her father for the purposes of betrothal, well, then the question becomes, is there validity of this marriage or not? Did the father accept it? If she's a yitoma b'chayei ha'av, or the father's she's really a yitoma, he's no longer alive, then, and even then if the mother's alive, they call her an orphan for this issue. Not that she's an orphan, but she's an orphan for this issue because her father's not there. So then she theoretically could betroth herself, and it would have validity on a rabbinic level as well. Which means what? How does she get out of that kind of marriage? Remember, all she has to do is miyun. She doesn't need a ceremony. She doesn't need a get. And by the way, a get is not up to her, but miyun is up to her. She gets to say when she becomes of age, I'm not interested in this man, and she can just walk. Okay, but she does need to do miyun if she wants to do that. She has to say the words, I do not want to be with this man. So now what we started with was a big machloka between Shmuel and Rav. We've realized by the end of yesterday's daf that Shmuel and Rav agree about this, and we're going to see Ulla who disagrees. Okay, Shmuel and Ulla both agree that if this minor gets betrothed and her father doesn't say anything, but he sees and he just doesn't respond, we have to assume, you could say we have to assume the worst, or we have to assume the best, or we don't know what, but you have to assume all possibilities, which is, and therefore she needs get and miyun, meaning she needs a get because perhaps he agreed and then she's betrothed. If she wants to marry somebody else, she would need a get to get out of it. Perhaps, but we don't know. Now, since it's only a doubt, if we only require a get, which is really theoretically all she really needs, because a get should release her from anything. But we're concerned that people will see she got a get. They'll say, oh, well, then it was a valid Torah marriage for sure, which it wasn't. If it was for sure a valid Torah marriage, then what would happen? If the husband were to, the now ex-husband, were to marry her sister, that would be Isur Arayot by Torah law, and there would be it wouldn't be a valid marriage at all. So if there's only a get, and people assume, which is not true, that it was a valid Torah marriage, it will create all sorts of ramifications that if someone were to marry her sister, for example, people would think it's not a valid marriage at all. Ein Kiddushin Tofsim, it was to say whatever they did was a meaningless action, and they would allow that woman to go get married to somebody else, that sister. But in fact, since it's a doubt, she actually can't go marry anyone she wants, because maybe really she wasn't betrothed. The original woman wasn't betrothed to this man. When this man now betroths her sister, it's actually a valid betrothal. And then if we allow her to go marry somebody else without getting her a divorce, she's a married woman, and then we cause mamzerim problems. So because of that, they say she has to do miyun also, and then everyone will know, oh, well, if she needs get and miyun, maybe there's a doubt about whether this marriage was actually valid. And then we ended with Rav Nachman, who said, we're really only concerned that this is a valid marriage and therefore require a divorce in this case. Again, we're really only worried about this if the father had already discussed betrothal to this man. But if it came out of the blue and she just, was playing in school with this kid and said, oh, let's just get married, well, no way would the father agree to that, right? That would be that case. You would say the father for sure would have agreed that they were playing with bottle caps and, and she ended up getting married to him. No way would the father have agreed unless they had discussed shiduchim, and arranging it before this arranged marriage, that they would have gotten together. Then you have to worry maybe the father agreed, but not if there wasn't a shiduch. Ulla amal, I'm now starting from 8 lines from the bottom of yesterday's stuff. Afilu miyun einat tzricha. Ulla says, Kiddushin Ketana is nothing. There's no chance that the father agreed. To which they say, Afagav deshitcho. What do you mean? Ulla is obviously disagreeing with what we just said. Rav Nachman said the case they're disagreeing about is only if they discuss the arranged, they discuss some sort of arrangement earlier with the father. Now, if the father discussed this before, why would you say she doesn't even need miyun? Like maybe the father really did agree, in which case she needs even a divorce. To which they say, Manda matneha lo matneha. The one who thinks that Ulla disagrees with Rav and Shmuel doesn't agree with Rav Nachman that Rav and Shmuel were talking about b'shitcho. Whoever brought this Gemara as if Ulla disagrees thought that Rav and Shmuel held even if there was no arrangement and no discussion before she went ahead and did it, we still have to worry the father agreed. And Ulla says we don't have to worry the father agreed. But Ulla theoretically agrees with them in the case of shitcho, that if they discussed some arrangement beforehand, the father discussed, and then she went ahead and did Kiddushin, then we really do have to be concerned. Okay, now, the Gemara says, but some people say that it wasn't brought as a machloket, but just that Ulla said this by itself. It's not right. That it wasn't a reaction to Rav and Shmuel, but you just said it on his own. Mativ Rav Kahana. We're now going to bring two sources, one a Mishna, one a braita. One's the first Mishna in Yevama, which you might remember, a very complicated Mishna. Try to simplify the part that we're going to see right now, which is this Mishna and another braita are going to seem to contradict Ulla that Ein Kiddushin Ketana Klum. We basically said, right, if the father is there and present and in the picture, right, not dead or betrothed her and she married already someone else, then the assumption is, according to Ulla, her actions are nothing. So the Mishnah says, Rav Kahana brings this Mishnah and says, Kulam imetu o mianu o nikarshu o shenimtzu aloniot sarotehen mutarot. So the first Mishnah discusses 15 arayot relationships, forbidden relationships. Okay, the first one, which is the relevant one here, is someone falls to yibum to their father. How does that happen? She marries her uncle, which is allowed, and then her uncle dies without children. She falls to yibum to her father. That would mean if her father, her original husband, okay, she was married to Reuven, and now falls to yibum to Shimon. Shimon is her father. So when she married Reuven also has another wife, okay, whether before or after, it doesn't make a difference. That's called the tzara. since she falls to Yibum to Shimon, to Shimon, who's her father, and that's a forbidden relationship, not only is she exempt from Yibum, also the second wife is exempt from Yibum. However, the Mishnah at the end says, Im metu, but if, let's say our woman is Yael, and Yael is married to Reuven, and then Reuven dies, and she falls to Yibum to Shimon, and Shimon is her father. But what if Yael died before Reuven died? Okay? Now, at that point, when Yibum happens, she's not in the picture anymore. Okay, now we're going to have that she's not in the picture for all sorts of reasons. In those cases where she's not in the picture anymore, because she's no longer married to Reuven for all sorts of reasons, then the second wife, Tamar, let's say, Tamar can marry Shimon, even though Shimon, right, his daughter is Yael, who was married to her husband. It doesn't make a difference because Yael is no longer married to the husband when the husband died. So either she died, or mianu, she did miun. Okay, now you'd have to figure out what kind of situation could she do miun when the father is still alive. Obviously, the father's alive because the father, she falls to Yibum, right? She falls to Yibum to the father. That's the whole idea. But if she did miun, then, well, she's already no longer connected to Reuven because she did miun with him. We'll get back to this in a minute, and that will be our difficulty. Or nitgarshu, or she got divorced from Reuven, or nimtzu ilonit, or it turns out that Yael was an ilonit. She never reached the age of puberty, the signs of puberty, none at all, and therefore she wouldn't exempt the tzara at all. Okay, so now the tzara in that case would be muteret to do yibum. Dekachaman, so who betrothed this woman that she did miun, right? If it can't be the father betrothed her, because there's no miun when the father betroths, because that's a doraita Torah level marriage. If it was the father betrothed her to his brother, well, then she would need an actual get. Miun wouldn't help her. It must be she betrothed herself. And if she betrothed herself, right, because the mother and the brother can't betroth her if the father's around. And what do you see? She betrothed herself. But Katani to buy a miun, and it says she needs miun. So this goes against Ulla, who said a minor who betroths herself doesn't need anything because it's a totally meaningless action. But who motive love and mufarik la? Rav Kana brought the question, and he actually brought the difficulty, and he actually resolves it. The case here where there would be miun was that while she was married to Reuven, right, she betrothed herself to Reuven on her own, and then did miun. But what happened was before she married somebody else. Okay, she married David. Okay, the father married her off to David. She got betrothed, married to David. David died. Now she betroths herself to Reuven. That she actually could do, because at that point, the father has no responsibility toward her. And that would be a situation with his miun and the father's still around. And that's what I said before about Yitoma b'chayah. Second question. So we resolved that contradiction. Second contradiction. And this is the sugya we saw earlier in the Masechet. There's a machloket about when a father sells his daughter to be a Jewish maidservant, which the whole idea is eventually, maybe, the master will decide to marry her or marry her off to his son. That's called yeud. Well, since the whole idea, theoretically, or part of the idea is that perhaps she'll marry him, there's a debate about what if the father wants to sell her to a relative to whom she cannot marry. Okay, not him, not the son. So, but Rabbi Elazar says you could. So there's a machloket about whether you could sell her off to relatives or not. Vishavin, now you might remember this. We have this exact same, this is another repeat sugya. They both agree, though, that if it's not Isur Arayot, where there's karet and very severe, where Ein Kiddushin Tovsim, where that's what we just talked about earlier with the sister. If he marries the sister of the woman he was married to, it wouldn't be a valid Kiddushin. So that would be a good situation where you can't sell the sister of someone he was married to him to be, or at least according to Tanakama, you can't do that. But if it was a widow to a kohen gadol, or a grusha, a divorcee, or a chalitza, one who underwent a chalitza ceremony, to a regular kohen, since that's just what we call an isur lav, it's just a negative commandment, it's not karet, and that means the kiddushin would actually be applicable. You're not allowed to do them, but if you did, it would actually, it would work. There would be kiddushin. So that everyone agrees that you could sell her to someone like that. Okay, so you could sell, basically the main point for us is you could sell a widow who's now a minor widow, remember, because you can only sell a woman as a slave and to be a maidservant when she's a minor. When she's 12, she leaves, or 12 with puberty, she leaves. So how can we have a situation where she's a widow? Because we have another principle that we're going to get to, which is ein shifchut achar ishut. If the father married her off, which we're assuming he did because she was a minor, and he married her off the first time, okay, he married her off to David, and now then what happened? David died or divorced her, and then he sells her as a slave to Reuven, let's say, and in this case, and Reuven is a kohen gadol, and she's a widow, he could do that. Now he actually can't do that because there's no shifchut achar ishut. Once the father marries off his daughter, he no longer can sell her to be a Jewish maidservant. So therefore, they say the following: if you're going to say the father betrothed her the first time, once he betroths her and she becomes an almanah, he can no longer sell her to be a maidservant. So that can't possibly be the situation. It must be that she betrothed herself, and notice they call her a widow. Now, you wouldn't be a widow if you're whole by Ulla, who says betrothing yourself is a meaningless action. Well, she wouldn't be a divorcee who would be forbidden to marry a kohen. I'm sorry, she wouldn't be a widow who would be forbidden to marry the kohen gadol. So, Amrav Amram Amrav Yitzchak, Hacha b'kiddushay Yehud, va'aliba de Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, you can't say, by the way, she was a yitoma b'chaya av here, because then he wouldn't have rights to sell her as a maidservant either. And if he doesn't have rights to betroth her, he can't sell her to be a maidservant. So you asked that in the chat. So anyway, Rabbi Yitzchak says, what happened here, and this again depends on how you side on this side of the machloket, and there's actually another machloket at this place. And some people say you can't have shifchut achar shifchut. You can't sell her to be a slave twice. But this person holds you can't sell her to be a slave twice. And what happened was the father sold her first to be a slave, a maidservant. Then what happened? The master did yehud. That's how she became married. He married her or married her off to the brother, to the son, I mean. And then her husband died, and now the father can sell her into be a maidservant a second time. That's allowed because yeshuvchut achar shivchut, and you'd have to say, why isn't she considered a yitoma b'chaya av if the father married her off already? Because we saw this machloket before. What's the money of Kiddushin in the Yehud case? Is it the money that the father received when he sold his daughter? Is that the kesef Kiddushin? Some people say yes. And then if that would be the case, then he actually did betroth her. And then he can't sell her to be a slave again because ein shifchut achar ishut. But if you're Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, he says the first money he got is not the money of the Kiddushin. What's the money of Kiddushin? If you remember, when she marries this owner, the master, well, the master, basically, she stops being a slave. So that means that she gains all the money that basically the value of the work that she no longer needs to do is a gain for her. Now, notice it's her that accepts the Kiddushin in that case, basically. Now, that's okay because the father accepted it from the beginning, right? He agreed from the beginning, but it's not, he didn't receive the money, she did. So that means it's not as if he betrothed her, even though his agreement was there from the beginning, but he's not the one who's considered betrothing her. And therefore, if, again, the person who did Yeh with her died, either the son or the master of the master or the master's son, she now, if she's an almanah, she can be sold as a maidservant by her father to a kohen gadol. That was the whole chiddush of this halacha. But the main point is because it's not shifchut achar ishut, and therefore this doesn't teach you anything about a woman betrothing herself, because it was a case where the father actually sold her to be a maidservant the first time, and not a case where she did the kiddushin herself. So both questions are resolved by saying you misunderstood the case. Neither case is talking about a woman who betrothed herself, and therefore it doesn't raise a question for Ulla. Now let's go back to Rav and Shmuel, but right now we're going to talk about Rav because we're going to see halacha that Rav quotes. In a case, let's just review. She gets a betrothal from a man without the knowledge of her father. Her father is silent. How do we define as silence? Rav says we have to be concerned for all possibilities. And therefore she needs get and she needs miu. Comes the Gemara and says, Itmar. It was said, let's go to the next stage of this case, or a possible next stage. She gets betrothed on her own. Without her father's consent, her father's silent. We don't know how to explain his silence. Then, mate, he dies. She falls to the brother for yibum now, or at least safek yibum, right? According to Rav, we view her as potentially, maybe she was married, maybe the father agreed, maybe he didn't agree. So now she falls to yibum to the brother. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. So now Rav Huna is going to pass down the name of Rav. This is a complicated line. The Gemara is going to have to explain what this means, but we're now going to have two tracks. It depends. So again, she was married to Reuven, but she got married on her own without her father's consent. Her father was silent. And now she falls to Yibum to Shimon. So we have Yael, who falls to Yibum to Shimon right now. But we don't even know if she was married to Reuven. And Shimon goes ahead and does maamar with her, which is basically Kiddushin, but for Yibum. Okay, it's the same exact thing as Kiddushin. It's the same ceremony. Harat mikudeshadi, he says to her. Okay, but because it's a precursor to Yibum, it's called something different. It's not called Kiddushin, it's called maamar. And we learned about it yesterday. The rabbis instituted this as right? It's not something by Torah law, it's something the rabbis instituted. But that's not relevant for our purposes today. So Rav Huna says, if she did maamar with him, then she has to do miu. But if she didn't do maamar with Shimon, meaning all she did was Reuven died, and now she's supposed to marry Shimon, which means there's zika, there's this connection between them because she's supposed to marry him, and until they get rid of that connection, she's forbidden to marry anybody else. Well, she doesn't need miyum for that. And what on earth does this mean? We don't really understand yet. The Gemara is going to explain. Ketzad, how does this work? So again, we're going to talk about the two tracks. Asaba ma'amal. Now remember, if she was just married to Reuven from this Kiddushin, and we don't know if the father agreed or not, what did Rav say? She needs a get, because perhaps she was actually really married by Torah law because the father agreed. Or perhaps the father didn't agree, which she wasn't at all, and we need people to know that it wasn't a Torah marriage, so that if she gets married to if the husband, Reuven, marries Yael's sister, right, people won't think, oh, it's not a valid Kiddushin at all because he was married to the sister. So to preclude that concern, we make her do me. In this case, what does she need? She needs a get, tzricha chalitza, vitzricha miyun. We now add another factor. She also needs chalitza. Now, why does she need all three? So let's go through. Tzricha get, shema nitratzeh ha'ad b'kiddushay sheni. She needs a get because now, what's the issue now? She did ma'amar with, right? She did Kiddushin with the first husband, Reuven. She did ma'amar with Shimon. Now, what's the problem? The father was silent both cases. We have no idea what his silence means. So now we don't know what his silence meant with the first one, and we don't know what his silence meant with the second one. Perhaps it meant something different. So therefore, she needs a get because maybe the father wasn't happy with Reuven. He didn't like him at all and wasn't happy with her betrothal to Reuven. But when she felt a yibum to Shimon, he liked Shimon a lot, and she was very happy. Now remember, ma'amal is the same as Kiddushin. So when he said Harei mikudeshadi, she wasn't obligated in yibum because she didn't, because there was no first marriage because the father never approved of it. But when he says Harei mikudeshadi, presumably to do ma'amal, it actually functions as Kiddushin, because if the father liked Shimon and wanted the marriage with Shimon, the betrothal, then this is actually betrothal with Shimon. In order to get out of that, she needs a get. Again, this is all if she wants to go marry somebody else. If she doesn't really care, right? Then right, but also she's suffix, so it's also kind of a problem to stay married to him. So basically, she needs a get from him. But a get is not enough because we have all these possibilities. Maybe the father was happy with the first marriage to Reuven, in which case she falls to Yibum to Shimon, in which case she needs chalitza because maybe the father wasn't happy with the Kiddushin to Shimon and didn't agree with that, which means there's no validity to this Kiddushin. And therefore, what are we going to say? She needs chalitza if she wants to go marry somebody else. She's got to get out of Yibum. She's actually obligated in Yibum. Possibility number one, she wasn't even obligated in Yibum because the father never accepted the first marriage. Possibility number three, tzricha miyun, because obviously, shema lo nitratzehav lo b'kiddushay rishon v'lo b'kiddushay sheni. Possibility number three is He didn't want, like Reuven, he didn't like Shimon. He wasn't happy with any of her betrothals, which means that she actually wasn't betrothed to any one of them. And in order to avoid, Yomru ein Kiddushin tovsim ba'achota, in order to avoid, now that there was a get and there was chalitza, people will think maybe she was definitively married to guy number 2, in which case Shimon can't marry her sister because he was married to her because of the get. So therefore, in order to show there was a suffix, we need to do maamar. We need to do miyun. She needs to do miyun and refuse the marriage to Shimon. So she's now done 3 actions with Shimon to get rid of that connection to him entirely. Lo asaba ma'amal. But now remember, that was mima and it lema'amaro. What they wanted to basically say is you still have to do miyun if there was ma'amal. But lo asaba ma'amal, ena tzricha ela chalitza bilvad. Well, if she didn't do ma'amal with him, and obviously she doesn't need to get with him because there was no Kiddushin with guy number 2. So that possibility is out. But not only that, the miyun possibility isn't even a possibility anymore. Why? Maamar, tibayinami miyun, shami mura en Kiddushin tovsim ba'achota. Are you going to say maybe she needs miyun because en Kiddushin tovsim, like we keep saying? No, because here, now, until now, the case was people would be concerned there was a divorce. Now, the sister of a divorcee is a clear Torah law. Everybody knows that. But in this case, it would be achot chalutzato. The only concern here is people see Shimon do chalitza with her. Now, if Shimon marries her sister, what's the story? You actually can't marry the sister of a woman you did chalitza with. Okay, and that's really because there was a zika here. There was a connection. You were supposed to get married even though you didn't. But that's only rabbinic, which means that if you were to go against the rabbinic law and betroth the sister, everybody would know the Kiddushin was valid because by Torah law, it's actually not an arayot. It's not forbidden. So, okay, let's read it now. You want to be worried and make her do miyun so that people will know that there's a doubt here and perhaps it actually wasn't a marriage at all, in which case, if he betroths the sister, it'll be a valid marriage. Well, everybody knows that to marry the sister of a woman that you did chalitza with, because remember, what's the whole issue? We don't want you to marry a woman, the sister of a woman you've been married to, but you were never married to this woman. All you did was do chalitza. So yes, you were somewhat connected to her because you were supposed to marry her because your brother was married to her and he died without children. You were obligated to marry her, but you never married her. So the rabbis forbade it, but it's only rabbinic. And how do we know this? Rebbe taught us to marry the sister of your divorce, of a woman you were married to and divorced her, that is a Torah law. But the sister of a woman who you did chalitza with is only rabbinic, which means that if you marry, right, our whole concern that maybe Shimon will marry Yael's sister Tamal, that's not a concern. Because, and they'll think that it's not a valid Kiddushin. Everyone will know it's a valid Kiddushin because by Torah law, it's not forbidden arayot. And therefore everyone would know Kiddushin or Tovsim and there's no concern. Okay, that was our 2 machlokot. Well, we had a machloket, Ulla, let's just review right now. Machloket Ulla versus Rav and Shmuel about a case where this woman gets betrothed without the consent of her father and her father's just silent. We don't know what he thinks. Rav and Shmuel are concerned, and the concern goes even farther when she falls to Yibum to the brother and the brother does maamar, then we have to add even another element. If there was no maamar and just that she fell to Yibum, then we actually only have to do chalitza. And that's for what we just explained. And then Ulla, who thinks there's nothing to be said for Kiddushay Ketana, it's a totally meaningless action. Now we get to a story. This story is going to be connected loosely to our topic. Okay, you'll see in a minute. Okay, these 2 men were sitting under a poplar tree in Babylonia. So they're sitting drinking wine. One takes a cup of wine and passes it to his friend. Okay, anyone who's a parent here or has parents knows how much parents want their children to get married. So these 2 guys are sitting around, kibitzing, and one says, here, take this cup of wine. With this cup of wine, Amar mikadsheli bartech liberi. Let's marry off your daughter to my son. Amar Ravina comes and says, Afilu lemanda amar cheshinan shemen nitratzeh ha'av. Now, we're going to do an analogy. You have to be very clear about this analogy because I don't want you to get confused with the characters. We're going to say daughter to father, meaning a daughter who does Kiddushin without her father's knowledge and her father's silent. Does that mean consent? We're going to do an analogy to father to son. When a father does a Kiddushin for his son, do we assume the son consents? Okay, that's the analogy we're making. It's a weird analogy, and anyone who's a child here will say, no way, no how, right? Well, what do you mean my father's going to decide for me who I'm marrying, right? Whether boy or, right, male or female. But we're going to focus on the male here because the female is not such a question. Because remember, in the times of the Gemara, what's fascinating about today's daf is you learn all sorts of cultural things about in the time of the Gemara, women always preferred to get married. So the one who married off, who accepted the betrothal on behalf of his daughter, that of course he could do. We've learned father can accept betrothal for his daughter, but perhaps not for the son. So comes Ravina and he says, listen, even if you're going to hold like Rav and Shmuel in the previous machloket, that perhaps the father would have agreed when he heard, and when he was silent, maybe he agreed to this betrothal, turning out Amud Bet. We don't assume that the son will be happy with the father's choice because, Rashi helps us out here, that the men want to know who they're marrying before they marry them. They want to see them. They want to know what's going on. They're not going to be so happy. Oh, my father took care of my betrothal for me. How nice. I don't have to deal with it. No. Children are not happy. Certainly sons are not happy that their fathers take care of this for them. And remember, a father can betroth his daughter by Torah law, but he can't betroth his son. The son does his own betrothal. The question is not, can the father do a betrothal for his son? The question is, can we assume that the son agreed? Again, that's why the analogy. The same way when a daughter does it, can we assume the father agreed? When a father does it, can we assume the son agreed? That's why it's a weird analogy because we're switching father and child here. So basically, Ravina says, even if you're going to hold by the person, by Rav, who thinks there's a concern, Rav or Shmuel, who thinks there's a concern that maybe the father would have agreed, definitely we're not going to say that with the son. Meaning, there's no betrothal here at all. It was a meaningless action that they did. Amrele Rabbanan the Ravina. Rabbanan, the rabbis say to Ravina, but wait, maybe the son told his father to do this, sent him as his agent to effect the betrothal for him. To which they have a great answer. Again, times have changed a little, I think. Who on earth would send their father to run an errand for them? Okay, I wish this were true, right? How many times do your children say, oh, can you go pick this up for me? Can you go pick this up for me, right? No one in their day would tell their father, go be my agent to betroth, right? To do something for me that I could do myself. No way, no how. That's really chutzpah. Vidilma artsuya artse kameh. Now, this is something that we could actually imagine. Maybe the father heard the son say he wanted to betroth this girl, and he decided to take care of it for him. I don't know if your kids would be so happy if, kids says, oh, I really want to betroth this woman, and then you basically go do it for them. But he was trying to liratzototo, right, to make him happy, to do what his son wanted. We're meaning basically, even though it's chutzpah for the child to send the father to do an errand, it's not chutzpah for the father to decide to do the errand for the child on his own. That's a different story, right? He was willing to overcome his, I'm the father and my son should be doing things for me and not me for him. Right? We already saw this where a child asked, remember when I come up from yeshiva and my father gives me a cup and my mother pours me wine, am I allowed to accept it, right? The parents can say, I'm okay. I can do that. So Amar Le, Rabba Barshimi, Beferish Amar Mal, Delo Savar Laha de Rabbu Shmuel. Delo Savar Laha de Rabbu Shmuel. So Rabba Barshimi says, listen, don't you know that Ravina, this is the rabbis kind of ask these questions to Ravina, and he pipes in and says, but don't you know that Ravina doesn't even hold by Rav and Shmuel? And as Ravina said, even if you hold like Rav and Shmuel, but he doesn't hold like Rav and Shmuel. He doesn't think that you can think that the father's silence was explained as agreement. And therefore, for sure, here in the son case, we're not going to assume that the son agreed to this, okay? We're not going to make any kind of assumption in that kind of way. We're just going to say this was a totally meaningless action. Thankfully for the son, right? If you were in the son's place, you'd be happy with this conclusion. Next case. There was a guy who betrothed a woman. Now we're talking about, again, a minor without the father knowing. betrothed his minor with a bundle of vegetables in a shuk. So instead of giving her a nice ring, he gives her a package of vegetables. And he does it in the middle of the shuk. Ama Ravina. So now Ravina again pipes in. Remember, Ravina doesn't think that we ever think the father consents, but he says the following, even for those of you who disagree with me. And you think that the father was agreeing to this? That's only if she did a proper ceremony. But in this kind of disgraceful way, or distasteful way, right? No way, no how. This is a degrading way of getting married. To get married in the shuk with a package of vegetables, very unpleasant. There's no way the father would have agreed to have his daughter get betrothed in this kind of manner. Which part are you the most bothered by here? Are you bothered by the vegetables? That it wasn't a ring or money or something of significance, it was a package of vegetables? Or was it that it was in the middle of the shuk? Nafkamina, what's the relevance? De kaddish bekaspa b'shuk. Well, if he meant that it was specifically the bundle of vegetables, then if he did the betrothal with money in the shuk, then maybe the father, we can, again, those who think that we have to be concerned, maybe the father agreed, then you would say, oh, well, maybe the father agreed. If you say it was the vegetables, if you say it was the shuk, then it doesn't matter. Then you're going to still say it's a problem, right? It's for sure the father didn't agree. Oh, or maybe you did it with a bundle of vegetables in a house. If it was done in a house, then it was already respectful. And therefore, they don't say an Ulla, right? Wedding hall. They didn't have wedding halls in those days, right? They did weddings, I guess, in houses. Again, learning a little bit about their culture. So if you did it with a bundle of vegetables in a house, or at least it was a respectful place, what would be the halacha? Amalei, to which he answers, Ravina answers, derech bisayon. Both those independently are both derech bisayon, and it doesn't make a difference whether it was money in the shuk or whether it was vegetables in a house. Either which way, no way would the father have agreed to such a degrading ceremony as that. Okay, now we get a very interesting story. Having been at a wedding yesterday, I could really try to imagine the scene, not that this actually could have happened last night, but we'll get into the details here. Huda Amar likrivai. We have a husband and wife, and they're each disagreeing about who their son should marry. Who their daughter should marry. Should she marry one of his relatives, or should she marry one of her relatives? So remember, it was very common in those days, another thing we're learning, to marry off their daughter to a relative. So the father obviously says, I want her to marry one of my relatives. And the mother says, I want her to marry one of my relatives. Well, the woman was apparently stronger in this family, and she pressured him into agreeing that we'll marry her off to one of her relatives. Well, while they were eating and drinking, meaning they had a big party, like the wedding last night, and under the chuppah, they do the braita Kiddushin. So the Kiddushin ceremony that they were going to do at this party, it wasn't like our wedding where we do Kiddushin and Nisuin, they were just going to do the Kiddushin part. But that's what we do under the chuppah. We do harat mikudeshet li, right? We say the braita erusin and the braita erusin, and then we do the Kiddushin, harat mikudeshet li. So before that part happens, everyone's at the reception, they're eating, enjoying. And lo and behold, while that ceremony is going, the reception's going on, Ata Kreve, one of the husband's relatives, remember, she's supposed to be betrothed at this party to one of the mother's relatives, based on the agreement of the father and the mother. Well, one of his relatives comes over, Be'igra, they go up to the roof, okay, where nobody's looking, Vikidsha, and he betroths her before the ceremony, that she's supposed to be betrothed to somebody else. And now the question is, she's obviously a minor, otherwise this wouldn't be a question. And the question is, now, what's the question? Remember, the father in the beginning wanted her to be betrothed to one of the relatives. So one of his relatives. So now that she got betrothed to one of his relatives, is he happy with that? Or since he already agreed with the mother that it's going to be to one of her relatives, maybe he's not so happy with this. So Abaye and Rava both agree that we don't say the father agreed to this. And basically, whatever happened, it's irrelevant. It's a meaningless action. And therefore, we're going to move on and go ahead with the ceremony of the Kiddushin. But for what, with the relative of the wife? But for what reason? They each give a different reason, which is going to have a certain ramification. Amar Abaye, K'tiv she'iri Yisrael lo yasu avla v'lo yidabu kazav. say the remnant of Israel will not do sin and they will not speak falsely. Now, the father made an agreement with the mother. So you can't say at this point, even if maybe he really wants deep down inside to have her betrothed to one of his relatives, he already agreed with the mother and he's not going to go back on his word. And therefore, we can assume he wants one of the relatives of the mother, which again means that whatever she did in the attic, in the upstairs floor, the roof, is totally irrelevant. Rav Amar, Chazaka, here's a good line. Ein adam torech b'suda mafsida. Having been at a wedding last night, right? Could you imagine if before the Kiddushin, someone else, it turns out she got betrothed to somebody else and cancel the rest of the wedding? I mean, you could turn the celebration into the celebration for her with this other guy, but it's very weird to do that, right? No one's really going to want to dance at that wedding and feel comfortable with what just happened. So basically, if he invested all this money in the party, there's no way he's going to now be happy with option A, which is what he wanted in the beginning, not because he made a commitment to his wife, but because he spent money on a party and he doesn't want to waste his money. My benayu, what's the relevant difference between them? Well, ika benayu to lo tarach. What if they didn't make a big party and it wasn't a big Kiddushin party festivity with a lot of food and a lot of money spent, but they just did a small thing in their house and it was just going to be a ceremony and there was no money spent on it? Then only Abaye's answer would still apply, but Rava's answer wouldn't apply at all. And Rava would actually claim that perhaps she was actually betrothed to guy number one, and the father really did agree. Okay, very interesting story. Now we're going to move on with more interesting Kiddushin situations. So we started with our daf with a woman who's a minor who gets betrothed without the knowledge of her father. Now we do another, and then we did what if there's yibum? Now we do another variation. Nitkacha lidat avia. She gets betrothed with the knowledge of her father, meaning, okay, whether she did it, the father did it, it's a regular betrothal of a father of a minor daughter. But then halach avia lemedinat hayam, the father goes abroad, and instead of waiting for the big wedding ceremony when the father comes home, right? This is like we talk about, let's just elope, okay? And I'm davenise, and she just goes and gets married to him. Now remember, the father agreed in the beginning. The question is, would he be happy when he gets home from Medina Hayam to find out that his daughter's already married, or will he be horrified and say, what do you mean? You didn't wait for me for the wedding? So, Amarav, now in this case, it's not that there's silence and we have to figure out how to interpret his silence. It's that the father's abroad. The whole time now until the father returns and we get to find out, is he agreeing or not agreeing? Is he going to protest? Well, if it was a kohen, she can eat truma. Okay? If the father comes and says, no way, no how, over my dead body, did you do this wedding without me? So then she'll have to stop eating truma. Rav Asi Amar, eina ochelet, she doesn't eat. What do you mean? If the father's going to come later and protest, and there's a possibility of it, well, then she can't eat now because it'll turn out that she ate truma for no reason before. Now, why did Rav say it's okay? Because Rav, if you remember, the whole laws of truma are that when she's betrothed, she actually can eat truma already. But there were two reasons to make a takana, either because of simponi might find a blemish with her, or she might bring home food to her family, right? Because she's still living with her family. She'll take wine from there and she'll feed them truma. So it's just exera de Rabbanit. So Rav says, since already from the erusin, and the father agreed to the erusin, the engagement, the betrothal, so therefore, since already then by Torah law, she could really eat truma, since she did the nisuin already, let's just let her eat truma. And Rabbanit says, no, because you're going to have that same issues that you had in the other case, which is the simpon, which is maybe he'll decide no, and then, it'll turn out she ate truma for no reason. Hava uvda, there was a case where this happened. The chashle Rav dahad Rav Asi. In the end, Rav, who said she could eat truma, decided to be strict and say, no, let's hold like Rav Asi, and not. Some people think he actually changed his mind. Some people say that he just decided to be strict. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak umodeh Rav she'im meta eina yorsha oke mamonu b'chezkamar. That's about truma. But when it comes to financial issues, let's say before the father comes back, she dies, the husband cannot inherit because that's taking money out of where it started. In other words, we always, when it comes to money, the burden of proof, the one who wants to take the money has to prove it. Now, the husband wants to say, the money's mine, but the father will say, it's in my domain until you can prove otherwise, and I never approved this marriage. For sure, now he's not going to want to prove the marriage because retroactively, he'll lose all her money. So basically, when it comes to money issues, we leave the money where it was in the first place, where it's clearly, which is in the father's domain. Next case, we'll finish the next case, and then we'll leave the third case for next shiur. Let's say she gets betrothed and then married without the father's knowledge. Same exact thing. She basically elopes. But in this case, avihakan. It's not that the father's away. The father's right here. She just decides under his nose to basically go get married without him. And like in the beginning of our situation, our first case today, he was silent, and we have to understand how to translate this silence. So Rav Huna Amar Eina Ochelet. Rav Huna says she can't eat truma. We can't assume the father agreed to the marriage, even though he did agree to the betrothal. Rav Yomi Bar Abba Amar Ochelet. Yomi Abba says, of course she can eat truma. We assume he agrees. So now let's see why. Rav Huna Amar Eina Ochelet. And he connects it to the previous and says, even afilu Rav Amar Ochelet. Rav in the previous case said she could eat, but why? Because the father was away. But here the father was here. He says, for sure in this case, the silence of the father is because he's so angry with her. Could you imagine? If your kids, again, try to imagine the situation. He betroths the daughter to this man. And then the father's in town. It's not like he was out of town and the couple just decided, we can't wait to get married. But basically under his nose, gets married, goes to, the city hall and takes care of the wedding and leaves the father entirely out of it. His silence is clearly he's so angry. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Ochelet. And afilu l'Rav Asi, and now he's going to go back and say, even the person who said last time she can't eat the truma because maybe he'll come back and protest, says the opposite. And says even here he'd say, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba thinks he would say, Ochelet. There the father was away. And we don't know what's going to be his reaction, so we have to wait and see till he gets back. And until then, she can't eat truma, because maybe he'll say no. But here he was silent. It must be he's agreeing. Otherwise, he would have screamed if he was angry. So here you have, and maybe it's a matter of personality of, what their reaction would have been, whether one is shocked into silence and the other is shocked into screaming. So he says the silence is translated as I agree. And therefore, we can assume since he's here and didn't say anything, it must be he agreed. And remember, he also agreed to the Kiddushin, so probably he agreed to the Nisun. Okay? The question is, what was he so angry about? We explained it that he wasn't invited to the wedding kind of thing. But it's also, the Yerushalmi says it's because he's now removed from financial responsibility for her. Now, we talked about this the other day, and I kind of said, remember we said about how the father's not so happy always, he has to have his consent when she leaves his house. It's not only, I realize, it's not only because he's responsible for her financially, but what does it mean to be responsible for her financially? It means he has to feed her, but he also gets all the proceeds of her. He has rights to inherit her, like we saw today. All the her financial stuff is also his. So it's a loss for him, even though he is responsible for her. It's actually a loss for him financially because then the husband has all rights to her stuff. So also possibly because of that, he was upset that she went ahead and got married. He wasn't maybe ready for that yet, and he wanted to have proceeds for her until the wedding. So anyway, that's, proceeds from her property, which the husband's going to get when she's married. So anyway, that's another possible reason. Okay, so quick review of what we saw today. I already reviewed the beginning. There was the Rav and Shmuel versus Ulla. Then we brought 2 questions against Ulla. Then we went and discussed Rav, who says what happens in a Yibum case when it goes one step farther. What are the concerns? Then we had this case of the 2 fathers. We tried to compare son to father, like daughter, father to son, like daughter to father. Do we assume the son agreed? And we said no, and we don't even assume the father agreed to the daughter, so we certainly don't agree that the son agreed to the father. Then we had the case of the embarrassing marriage, and for sure the father wouldn't agree to that. Both issues independently. Then we had the story of the relatives, and then what happened, and when the father wanted that originally, but then agreed to something else, right? Do we assume he really wanted the relative or not to marry her? And nobody really thought that, just for different reasons. And then we had these 2 cases of where the Kiddushin happened with the father's consent, the Nisuin didn't, and then 2 different situations and 2 different halachot about what happens if the father was abroad when the marriage happened, what happened if the father was in town and was just silent when the marriage happened, can she eat truma or not? And tomorrow we'll get to a 3rd variation of that case. Wishing everybody a great day. And if you have weddings this week, I know I was invited to lots of them this week, so it's a wedding week and interesting wedding stories for today.